Welcome back to another episode of the Way Forward podcast with your host, Alex Zek. This episode, we had on Dr. Edith Ubuntu Chan. She is probably said this in the episode. She's probably one of my favorite people in the cross section of consciousness and mind, body, spirit health. And it's really all the same thing. So I guess she's probably my favorite person in this space period. Maybe my favorite person on the planet. But Dr. E, just my goodness, the love that pours out of that human being is unmatched in my opinion. And it makes a lot of sense. Why? Because of the experience that she shares during this episode, which was transformational for her and really shifted her entire perspective on life. And it's amazing because she's using that experience effectively to help other people understand who and what we are and understand what it means to be healthy. So without further ado, here is the episode with Dr. Edith Ubuntu Chan. Dr. E, thank you so much for joining me. I said this to you before that I was like stalking you, looking at pictures of you on the internet right before this, doing some more research on you. And I came across a picture of a bunch of pictures of you smiling. It was just like your bio pictures or whatever. And I can truly say that you're one of my favorite people in like the cross section between like the health and consciousness space, which is really the same thing. But like, you're just a ball of light and love and energy. And I just love it so much. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. You know that I'm your biggest fan ever. And I want to give a shout out to your amazing mama. I want to thank your mama for raising such a fine young man. I mean, you're like, when my boy grows up, I often think like, wow, I hope my boy grows up to be such a fine young man as that Alec guy.
Thank you. That means a lot.
And it's like, this is such an integrated, balanced human being. You have obviously a huge heart, but your willingness to the courage to speak truth, but to speak truth in a really honoring, loving, respectful kind of way. That's the skill that I think many of us are needing to hone these days.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I wrote down a question on that we'll get to later that I had for you. And there's like a mix of questions that I have that are like genuine, authentic, like what I want to know, and then things that I want my listeners to be able to hear from you that I've heard from you before. And it's funny, I was trying to figure out how I wanted to start the first question. And a piece of me wanted it to be like your story on how you started to go into, you went to Harvard and you studied math there. You were a triathlete, and then you went to become a traditional Chinese medicine practitioner. But the other story that I loved hearing, I heard on Charles Eisenstein's podcast, was your experience with Qigong. I think it was while you were in traditional Chinese medicine school. So I'm going to leave that up to you, which one you would like to start with or how you would like to let that flow.
Okay, I think probably the more impactful thing is the Qigong experience.
Okay, let's do it.
Because on a mental plane, so after September 11th happened, it made me ask some questions about, whoa, life isn't exactly how we think it is. And I had recently graduated from undergrad. I was getting this nice .com tech job and being paid a nice salary and just living a good life. I just graduated from, an Ivy League college. My immigrant parents were so proud of me and, like living a good life, supposedly, according to the world standards. Mm-hmm. And then September 11th happened and I realized, wow, I really, if the world ended tomorrow, I really hate my job. Mm-hmm. I would really regret not having lived a more fulfilling, beautiful life. And at that time, I just met my then boyfriend, now husband. And so I'll skip the story of of how I ultimately found the courage to quit my .com job to start pursuing my childhood dream to be a Chinese medicine practitioner. But a couple of years into Chinese medicine school, I was just like exploring all these beautiful things like Qigong and Tai Chi and nutrition and holistic approaches to health and healing, just like so excited about all the things that I was learning. And every time I practiced Qigong, I found a sense of deep inner peace that after having explored many different systems of meditation, it was only Qigong because of the focus on breath work that somehow that allowed me to drop deeper and deeper into states of meditation that all the other forms of meditations, I just had a hard time with the monkey mind. It'd be like, oh, just sit there and watch your thoughts float like clouds. And I'd be like, no, just, it was like all the other forms of meditation I tried was just didn't work for me. And I've actually heard some teachers say that there might be something physiologically, if you were born, if this lifetime, because I incarnated in a Chinese body, that possibly Qigong practice helps me to tap in deeper, quicker, like something genetically or DNA wise, maybe that clicked for me. So Qigong really worked for me. But there was this one particular day, I was about 2.5 years into Chinese medicine school at that time, I think. Nothing would prepare me for this particular experience. So every time I practiced Qigong, I kind of expected to like zen out and feel peaceful, less stress, more relaxed, that's it. But this particular time, this beautiful Qigong teacher who was guiding the meditation, I just followed along just like any other practice. I'm following along this visualization and going deeper and deeper and deeper. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I exploded. I don't know, I or it or this exploded into trillions and trillions of pieces of love and light. So this it experiences itself the size of the entire cosmos. The feeling was so intensely beautiful. I had no reference point for anything like it. It was like the best orgasm you've ever had times a trillion, something like that. It was like, there are no words to describe, but I think your listener understands this experience where I was the size of the entire cosmos.
Does this still sit in your memory as vivid as it was then, or able to call back on it as?
Yeah, as I tell the story, I shift into that state where I'm like even kind of hard to locomote to find the words, because you drop back into that state. It's like, how do you even? It's debilitating, actually. And it's very hard to find the words to describe me to this day. I've told this story a number of times. I'm always struggling to find the right words that can actually describe the experience. But I think, fortunately, many other people have had experiences like this. So when I speak it, people understand. It's not really about the words. Like, many people now have had these powerful awakening experiences. But this was in 2003. And I was new on the spiritual journey, on the healing journey. It was all new to me. So I had no reference point. And all I knew was that I was home. I just knew that this is our natural state. This state of reality was so much more real than the other reality. Somehow in that moment, I just felt, wow, I'm home. This is how it's actually supposed to be. This is who we actually all are. I don't know how much time I was in that space, but in that space, there was this understanding, like there was no more questions and all my questions were answered. It was just complete contentment, complete peace, and complete stillness. such intense sensations of love that I just wanted to stay there forever. And it was a space that is beyond time and space. So it felt forever. Eventually, from a far away distance, I heard the Qigong teacher in our class like guiding some steps about something else to do in the meditation. I was like, wait a minute, I have a body. I'm in a Qigong class.
Maybe were you standing at this time? Were you standing up?
No, we were seated.
Okay.
Seated. I don't know. I mean, I have no concept. I had no concept of my physical body, so I don't know what was going on. I don't know how long this lasted. I have no cut to this day. I don't know what happened there, but eventually, from a faraway distance, I heard her voice, and I was like, I should probably go back to that body. So I took this trillions and trillions of pieces of love and light. I'm like, this is pretty ridiculous. I'm going to try to squeeze all of that into a pretense of a physical body. And that feeling was like so strange and so ridiculous and almost painful. To densify all of that and try to squeeze it into this physical body. And as soon as I landed back in my physical body, it was like avalanches of tears just bursting out of my eyeballs, just with so much deep gratitude that I got to taste. I got to go home. I got to feel and remember what it's like to go back to our natural state. And also this like clashing with intense sorrow, because in that moment I realized, wow, everything I've been told about this reality is backwards and upside down. Like in that split second, I understood that.
Wow.
So it was like intense gratitude, intense bliss, intense love, crashing with intense sorrow and grief. Because the grief was like, I've been living, my whole life has been a lie up to this point. So the tears just kept coming down. And this was early, right? 2003 was like, there was not a lot to look up on the internet. There was a few metaphysical books, and I didn't know who to talk to. So I went into this deep dark night of the soul for like 2 or 3 years after that, just became a seeker. I read thousands of books on metaphysical stuff, spirituality, the nature of reality. I got a lot of peace listening to interviews and reading books about near-death experiences that people have had. Recognizing that some people had similar experiences when they actually cross over into the light, and then they came back and they became a completely different person when they came back from their NDEs.
How did you integrate that with like that experience of feeling that just eternal love and peace and light, right? And then coming back into your human body? Because let me preface this by saying, when I first started meditating, I looked at it as a form of escapism, because the feeling that I would feel meditating, I was like, this is my way to escape reality. But like, I look at someone like you and I look up to you in many ways, because from what I've gathered and from speaking with you, you do such a phenomenal job of taking that knowing of who and what we truly are and bringing it back into this reality that we are currently in linear time, and making this experience more fruitful, more loving, and not looking at that as like, dang, I wish I could be there all the time. How did you integrate that?
I think that was that was the journey. And those of you that are listening that are on a similar journey, I just want to let you know, I understand. We understand, because it can get so dense and so dark and so challenging down here. You know, many of us want to do all these things to escape this intensity. Many of us, I've come to realize, we incarnated into this lifetime to help bring forth a different paradigm. I think probably all of your listeners are aware of that. And maybe we don't have a lot of lifetimes with all the darkness and the shadowy stuff that's happening on this planet. So it's just a lot to handle. Like our souls, are sensitive and empathic and so gentle, right? Like we're such tender, loving people. It's hard to deal with all this stuff, all the darkness that we see on this planet. So I understand. And in the beginning, after that experience, I would go back to meditation as an escape. I did that for years. I would say the dark night, I didn't know this term dark night of the soul. In those early days, how I explained it to people was, I feel super homesick. Even though I've got my friends, my family, everybody's around, but I have this deep inner like soul homesickness that I was carrying around with me for years. And I think it was gradually a lot of different things, like past life regression filled in a lot of my understanding. The work of Byron Katie filled in a lot of things. Just many different meditation retreats, a lot of meditations where I receive guidance and communications with different beings, dream work, so many things. Eventually, different things started filling in some gaps. And one time Jesus came to one of my dreams and gave me some guidance. So it was just like, I've been blessed in meditations, in dream time, in retreats, also in my physical 3D life. Just as they say, when the student's ready, the teacher will come. Gradually, piece by piece by piece, I came to this very clear understanding that we incarnated here for this time of transformation, that we have a mission here. We got some work to do. So that whole alchemical process, I realized I felt like I was going through that for me, but that ultimately there was like a bunch of us that came to the planet to go through that journey a little bit earlier, so that this time now we would actually be already integrated, so that we can bring forth new possibilities, like a new way of being a human, meaning that, for example, in the old world, if you bump into problems, you would look at what's the external tools, tactics, and strategies to fix a problem. Now we understand that in the new paradigm, if there is a problem, we go deeply within, we shift our inner state of being, we get inner guidance. Each individual chooses to bring the best of themselves into the situation, and together you find that higher win-win possibility, right? So in the new paradigm, it requires everybody to be an integrated being that is able to elevate the consciousness of the situation that transcends the problem. So that means that you need a lot more integrated people to really solve some of these big problems that we see happening in the world.
How did this experience shift your perception with regards to health? Because you were in school to be a traditional Chinese medicine practitioner, and as I said before, the cross section of health and consciousness, which is really the same thing. And I look at some of the ways, even some of the holistic ways we view health, we completely leave out the element of the fundamental nature of our being, right? How did this experience shift your approach with regards to being a traditional Chinese medicine practitioner?
Well, it took some time, because when you're in school, back then in the beginning, I was still in school. So in school, you're just busy memorizing, regurgitating, passing lots and lots of exams. I think anybody who's listening that has like a medical degree can agree with this. There's no time to actually integrate and contemplate and philosophize. You're so busy memorizing and passing exams and jumping through hoops. And then you've got a boatload of school loans when you graduate. Like, I gotta hustle to start like paying off my school loans. I mean, so, this is maybe going off a tangent. It took some time before I got to a space where I was like, okay, I've got a good rhythm with my clinical practice. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna keep prioritizing my life as a truth seeker. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna keep carving out time to travel around the world, studying with different healers, going to different meditation retreats, like spending time alone in nature in contemplation. So I just made it a priority for many years. And it took I would like to tell a sexy story that it was like a moment of insight, but it's actually something that took many years to finally find that integration, to come to the understanding that a lot of times it's just not the tools, tactics, or strategies that promotes healing. It's an inner state of being. And the best practitioners I've observed out there, the best healing practitioners out there, they've done a lot of inner work. And in the presence of that, it's like through the law of resonance. Do you know how wireless charging works?
Is it resonance, I'm assuming? Like,
yeah, so wireless charging is like the wireless charger creates a magnetic field and the other device comes close to it and then bing, it like activates into that magnetic field. So the same thing with like tuning forks. Yeah. If one tuning fork is going and the other one comes close and they, they resonate, right? Through the law of resonance, people can get activated into a higher vibrational state of being. And so there are great tools, tactics, and strategies for healing, but I've discovered that far more important is the state of being, the state of consciousness, especially from which we it's like a lot of times it's not what we do, but how we do something, the state of being that we bring to that activity. And it's exactly the same with all the healing. It's like you could do a juice cleanse because your motivation is like, I don't want to get sick, I don't want to get sick, I don't want to get sick. Or you could do a juice cleanse because, wow, I love this body. I love this life. This is an awesome life. I want to have a clean, vibrant, sacred temple with which to navigate this beautiful life. What a different state of being, right? Which one do you think will get a better result?
Yeah, it's just a shift in like the perception in which, like the intention behind why you're doing things, right? I love that so much. So you said something that triggered a memory of listening to your episode with Charles Eisenstein, where you talk about the dark room meditation retreat that you did with, is her name Jasmine, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Could you explain that experience? Because that was one of like the coolest stories I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, I would say as a truth seeker, as someone that's seeking to become a more integrated human, traveling around the world, studying with many teachers, that darkroom retreat with Jasmine was probably the number one, at least the top three, but might be the number one most profoundly life-changing experience on my journey so far. So in 2013, I went to this retreat with Jasmine in Thailand. And so darkness meditation, meditating in complete darkness for a number of days, is a practice that is traditional in the yogic tradition and the Qigong tradition. The ancient Egyptians did it. There's the Kogi Mamos in Colombia. They're seers and teachers. The Mamos, they're actually raised in complete darkness for years.
Oh, wow.
The idea is that when you're in prolonged darkness and in a meditative state, it creates a certain biochemistry within you that causes DMT to be produced from the inside out. And so a lot of people have heard of things like ayahuasca and different medicine journeys where you take the medicine from outside in. In the Chinese Qigong tradition, it is understood that yes, that does work, but it comes at a cost. If you take these medicines, these visionary medicines from outside in, there's this idea in Chinese Qigong and Chinese medicine that you're born with a certain amount of essence. It's like the life force juice that creates your longevity. That juice that you have within, if you drink tons of coffee or you have a go, 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 push, push, push lifestyle, you can burn up that essence faster. But if you have a cultivation practice, if you have good lifestyle, you eat well, you sleep well, you meditate, you know how to let go of stress, you don't pound coffee and Red Bulls all day, then you have a good juice. You can sustain that juice and have good longevity. So this concept of essence and cultivating and nurturing your essence is a big thing in Chinese medicine and Chinese Qigong. So in Qigong, it's understood these medicines from the outside in, they do work, but they burn up a lot of essence real fast to blast you into that near-death state so that you can have some insights about your life. So some people say, well, it's still worth it because I got super blasted like a rocket ship into that state where I could have perspective about my life. And I got some insights that are so powerful that even if my life is shorter, it's a higher quality. Me, I'm like, I want the win-win. Is there a win-win? It turns out the dark room is the win-win. That in the darkness, you generate this biochemistry in a very relaxing, nurturing, like just deeply nourishing kind of way from the inside out. And so when I was in the dark room, it was 11 days with 9 days and 9 nights in complete darkness. And Jasmuheen guided the meditation, and she just created such a beautiful, soft, and feminine field of energy that was also very, very nurturing. So when I was in darkness, I was like, wow, this is just so nourishing. Like I don't usually have trouble sleeping. When I got into the dark room, the first 3 days in complete darkness, I was shocked because I've lived mostly in cities all my life. And when they turn off the lights in this room, like so what they do is like this, they have the building has around the perimeter, all these bedrooms, and the bedrooms have windows that they put caps over it. So there's good ventilation, but there's not a single photon of light that can come into the building. And then the building itself, they have staff that service it. So they bring water and juices and so on into the building. And they have like 3, 4, 5, I don't know how many layers of dark curtains so that as they enter and exit the building, not a single photon of light can come into the building. So it's really completely pitch black. You can't see your own hand, for example.
Wow.
And they pad every corner with like padding.
I can imagine.
Like you have to turn left or right, like they dangle these balloons right at head level so you can bonk your head into the balloon before you like bonk your nose into a wall, right? So you know to either turn. They have all these safety precautions. And the first day they turn on the lights in the building so you learn to navigate it. You put on a blindfold, you practice navigating this building, and then it's lights out 9 days, 9 nights in complete darkness. And the very first thing I noticed, having lived in cities all my life, is that the darkness is kind of a kind of food that I was hungry for.
Wow.
I was like, I'm hungry for this. You know, how have you been like a vampire, like working indoors in front of a computer all day, and you go out into nature and sunshine and the prana of the trees and the fresh sunshine and fresh air and the beauty, you feel like that's a kind of food, right? You've had that experience. It was exactly like that, but the darkness.
Wow.
I had no idea that I was hungry for complete darkness.
The thing that sticks with me on this piece right here is I think I had a conversation with you on the phone, and you said, correct me if I'm wrong, you decided not to eat basically the entire time you were in that 9 days. And immediately what I thought of is so many people that I know that are breatharians, and like, I'm not saying that in that moment you were like a breatharian though, really, but they all say that their food source is the sunlight. And I immediately thought like, whoa, Dr. E went 9 days without food and had no sunlight. So where was that energy coming from? Was it coming from within you, or how did that work?
I have to introduce you to Jasmuheen because she could speak so much more eloquently about that. I'll share my experience, which is that I've discovered that we, in our modern lifestyle, the hustle, stress, and just like the way the society is built, creates a human psychology and physiology that is just stupidly inefficient. And I dropped into a state of physiological efficiency. I don't know if I was a breatharian, but I felt like my system was just working properly for the first time. That's how it felt. So the complete darkness now I have a good friend named John Charves. He started this nonprofit called DMT Quest, all about studying the endogenous, the inside out DMT production. Like, what does DMT do in the human physiology? And it's been found, there's some latest research that shows that DMT is as abundant as, say, things like serotonin and melatonin.
Wow.
That it has a it's not just about spiritual awakening, that it may have profound multi-system physiological effects for anti-inflammatory function, possibly anti-cancer, tissue healing function, and so on and so forth. Like, a lot happens in that DMT state in terms of tissue regeneration and efficient healing processes that happens. So I just have my direct experience that the first 3 days in complete darkness, I just slept like a baby most of the day. I just felt deeply, deeply, deeply restful. Like, I have no words to describe how deeply restful it was. And so the first 3 days, most of the 20, I probably slept like 16 out of the 24 hours every day, even though I wasn't sleep deprived. I went to Thailand a few days early to make sure that I was already well rested before going in. Right. And this was Mantak Chia's healing retreat center. So you can go there early, stay there, get massages, Thai massage, get a colonic, get some foot reflexology, and love yourself up, eat some good nutritious food, all this good stuff before your retreat. And once I got into the 9 days and 9 nights, I'm like, I feel so well rested already. And then boom, the lights out. I just conked out and went so deep. And then after about the third day, I was so well rested, I hardly slept a wink for the subsequent days. Like the next 6 days, I was like, I just feel awesome and well rested. And the whole time I kept feeling like I was resting. The whole thing was very restful. It wasn't like people tell me ayahuasca, I'm like purging and things coming out, all your orifices is very intense. So I had a lot of intense visionary experiences and insights and profound things changing. A lot of wisdom, a lot of insights, a lot of shifts, deep inner work being done, but it was in this very nurturing kind of way, which is very different from what I hear from my friends who do ayahuasca, for example. And so after the third day, I just kept going deeper and deeper. And every time, you know how when you meditate, sometimes the insights come to you in like a flash of insight, like this deep inner knowingness. Well, in dark room, because you're in a visionary state, that insight comes to you in a flash of knowingness, a whole body feeling, and boom, 3D, omni vision, high tech color, right? Like, so the whole thing just.
So you were like like actually with your physical eyes seeing. Right. Wow.
Yeah. So gradually those first 3 days, I mean, immediately as soon as I got into darkness, when I was meditating, I was having visionary experiences. But then it was just like colors, lights, like it was like a light show the whole time.
That's so cool.
Every single moment. I wasn't sleeping. So every time I meditated, the answers would come to me in these like spectacular visions.
Wow.
And really practical stuff. Like I was trying to build a new website. And at a certain moment, I was like, I need to build a new website when I get out of this dark cave. I wonder what the website's going to look like. And boom, it was shown to me in high def visions. I was like, wow, this is a really efficient way to do things, I guess.
Have you been back to do it again anywhere? Or I know like
I have not, and I would love to. And lately, a lot of people are asking me because of travel restrictions. Jas Muheen can't get out of Thailand, so she's not. And people have a hard time traveling to Thailand. And there's the Mantak Chia runs his own retreat. Jas Muheen is famous for her retreats out of his building that she runs, a different style. There's a place in Germany that's somewhat famous for it. There's a few other places, but as far as I know, nobody in the United States is offering it. And so lately, a lot of people are saying, hey, Dr. E, you want to coordinate something? So I'm just starting to look. There's a lot of logistics, as you imagine, to set up a building like this, cap the windows so there's good ventilations, pad all the corners and supply the right juices and water and so on. So in Mantak Chia's retreat center, they delivered the juices to the front of the building. But water, they had basically every other room. There was water all over because they wanted to make sure nobody got dehydrated, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, there's a lot of logistics involved in making a great supportive experience for people. And of course, it's not for everybody, right? Because you bump up into fears and stressful thoughts and old memories and possible traumas. And if you haven't done quite a lot of inner work already, there's no escape. There's no phone.
Yeah.
There's no internet. There's not even a spiritual book. It's just you in complete darkness with your thoughts.
Wow.
So if uncomfortable thoughts and memories pop up to the surface, can you handle it? There's absolutely no escape, right?
Mhm.
So it goes really deep, and people that have already done a lot of inner work and have tools to work with those will get a lot out of the experience. People who aren't ready and rush into such an intense experience, yeah, it's not for
Can turn
everybody.
into like an ayahuasca experience almost if you haven't done the inner work before.
Right. Yeah, so it's definitely not for everybody.
What was your, because I could imagine after like leaving that experience, it was also difficult to integrate again back into society. What was like some of the, I guess, takeaways is the correct word. What, like, how did you integrate that experience into your life in a more fruitful, peaceful, beneficial way in like your current state of being after that experience?
Well, a lot of insights about what am I doing here, the purpose of my life, that kind of stuff was shown to me, and shown to me in such a way that I shedded like a lot of doubts. Like before it was like, oh, it's some new agey ideas, philosophy, but in the dark room, a lot of things integrated for me where I understood, because the answers came to me, well, partly because of the fasting. It was just so clear. I wasn't distracting myself with cell phones or social media or even books or even eating. No distractions. So when the answers came, they were very pure and very clear and very clean, which really helped me to integrate. And so I came out of there with a very integrated sense of, yeah, I incarnated to this planet for a beautiful time of transformation. I'm meant to be together with a lot of other amazing beings who are also here for the same purpose. I'm meant to be here to help bring forth a new paradigm of awesomeness and beauty on this planet. How freaking exciting is that? I realized that I won a cosmic lottery to get one of these bodies in this lifetime, in this incredible moment of transformation. So I came out of Darkroom with a deep kind of, I felt honored, blessed, excited to be here. Whereas initially after my 2003 meditation experience, there was that kind of like discombobulated, unintegrated state of being, this homesickness. What am I doing here? This whole situation here is backwards and upside down. The whole reality is inverted. It doesn't make sense. By 2013 in Darkroom, I had integrated this understanding that, yeah, that old paradigm is backwards and upside down. Stop arguing with the reality of that. It is that. And we have the blessing to bring forth a beautiful, much more beautiful and awesome new paradigm. We came here exactly for this. So it's exactly correct that I had the blessing of having an experience where I could see reality as it really is. I could see that all this stuff is backwards and upside down so that I could be part of the solution, just like you are, just like all of our listeners are. So I came out of there just with all this like confidence and excitement, feeling so blessed, feeling so honored to be a human during this special time.
I have a question on like the balance between, because what you just said there sparked a thought in me how I still find myself struggling to, I'm focusing a lot of my energy on drawing attention to the negative things that exist rather than focusing my energy on creating something more beneficial for everyone, right? And there's like a spectrum there or a balance, because it's necessary to call out or to acknowledge the darkness and to make other people aware of the dark elements of the reality that we're experiencing right now, and some of the things that are oppressing people and harming people, all of the systems that are in place, sort of. But it's like, that's important, but even more important is taking that energy and using that energy to create something more beneficial, rather than resisting the system that is, or petitioning it to change, just going and creating new systems. Where's the balance in your mind between the two? Because that's like something that I personally struggle with, and I'm still trying to find the balance on those.
Yeah, I think I think there's a need for all of it, because I feel like I just got really lucky that I had that experience where I came back from blasting into trillions of pieces of light, and came back and I could just see, oh, the whole thing is backwards and upside down.
Mm-hmm.
But even so, listening to podcasts and your social media posts helps me to fill in those details, right? Like, there's this intuitive sense that this whole game is not right. And then people who actually, if they feel called to do the research on a certain piece of that not rightness, and to, in a concise and easy to understand way, present that to the world, that helps us to grab hold on it. And then once we understand the problem, we can have the solution. It's just like, a healer has to understand where, where the issue is, so that you can work with it and actually heal it, right? Like, they call it a diagnosis or whatever. So it's not about like all love and light, rainbows and unicorns, and not looking at the darkness. Like, the true love and light has courage. Like, love takes action. Love doesn't, run away and escape from the darkness. In fact, love shines a light on the darkness more fully until it transmutes all of it. So I think I just want to honor everybody. If you feel called to do research or take legal action or whatever you want to do in a very practical way to dismantle some of the old paradigm corruption stuff, that I support you and I honor you and I thank you for doing that work. Just that I want to encourage you to take beautiful care of your health and your sanity in the process, because we can't afford for, all the truth seekers and truth tellers out there to get wrecked and burnt out. Like, we need you guys to do it in a beautiful and integrated way, and and radiate love, and focus on the solutions to all of this darkness in the process.
That brings me to my next question. I'm going to put you on the spot here. What is your definition of health?
What is my definition of health? Well, my definition of health has evolved a ton, because in my Super Wellness class, Super Wellness was my first book. I'm writing a second book right now. So I wrote Super Wellness in 2017, but I've been teaching Super Wellness classes since 2012. Mm-hmm. It's a 6-week course where each class is about 2 hours. And we spend the whole first 2 hours talking about what is your definition of health. And I've taught the class 30 times over these years. So my definition of health is like a kaleidoscope of multi-dimensional, multifaceted awesomeness, because I've learned from all the people that have participated in our class. So it's a constant evolution. If I were to distill it down to a simple essence, I would say health is our ability to be fully present with what is, and to allow all the challenges, ups and downs of life to strengthen us, inspire us, show us how we can learn and grow and blossom into an even better version of ourselves. So that every stressor that comes your way is like a workout. It's like a little exercise. Like, you get fitter, stronger, wiser, smarter, and more awesome with each and every iteration of so-called stress, whether it's spiritual, psychological, emotional, or physical stressors. Health is your ability to actually like step up your A game as you encounter these kinds of so-called stressors.
Couldn't you say that on like a more macrocosmic level as well, where it's like these people, I don't even need a name. Like, let's say, okay, I'll name two, like Bill Gates and Anthony Fauci, right?
Okay.
They're creating what I would perceive as collective stress. But couldn't we look at that as like conducive ultimately to our highest good, to collectively bringing into being the deepest essence of the darker aspects of humanity that we've been clinging on to, so that we can effectively heal it?
Beautifully said. I couldn't say it any better. So if health is your ability to, adapt to stressors, to learn and grow and strengthen and become more inspired, more wise, more fit, more smart, right? Then how does a healthy person choose consciously to encounter those stressors versus a less healthy person? If that's your definition of health, then a healthy response is to choose to look at these stressors or look at the shadow, look at the darkness with actual excitement, actually, instead of resentment.
That's an amazing level. That takes power, Dr. E. That takes like a truly integrated person to be able to do that. Like, I'm sure every one of us, even say people listening, the most integrated person that's listening right now says, yeah, I do that most of the time, but I probably struggle, which is like, that's just part of the human condition, you know?
Well,
it's like,
but that just tells you that that's your like growth edge, as they call it, right? Like that's just that's your next level right there, right? But it's true. I mean, Fauci, Bill Gates, all these shadow players, they came here to help us exercise our spiritual strength.
mm-hmm.
And they are here to give us an opportunity to shine our light. I mean, these terms sound so cheesy coming out, but you know what I mean? Like they're here clarifying for us what we prefer, what we don't prefer. They're here to push us into a corner so we have no way out. As they say, there's no way out but in. We have to do that inner work so that we can shine our light and stand more strongly in our full power. We have no choice now. So shouldn't we be so grateful for them for creating this game on the chessboard where we really have to step up our A game right now?
Mm-hmm. Do you think, it's actually a good segue into another question. I have like a list of like 15 questions for you. We'll have to do a part 2 sometime. Do you think, so what is your perception on past lives, on reincarnation? And then this will be a third part to that. Do you think that if you do take those to be real things that happen, like we live multiple lives and we reincarnate, do you think that Fauci and people like Dr. Anthony Fauci and Bill Gates consciously knew that they were going to be playing this role to help up level humanity, and in ways you could almost call them a light worker, you know, like in an interesting way?
Wow. Yeah.
Sorry, that was like 8 questions in one. So
yeah, I think you're blowing everybody's mind right now. So I don't know on some ultimate cosmic scale what the ultimate truth is, but this feels like an empowering truth for us to move forward with, right? Because ultimately, everything is just a story. Like in the end, we all return to pure source and let go of all the stories and layers of stories. But for now, what is the story that allows us to get the most fulfillment and richness and learning and growth out of this life? And that story you just told feels resonant and true in my body. As you know, in the various classes I teach, one of the things is like, don't take my word for it, don't take anybody's word for it. feel truth in your body. Like truth detection and bullshit detection is actually a bodily experience. Right. And as you were saying that, and the listeners out there, I think you would resonate. Like as Alec was saying that, didn't that feel like, yeah, I feel that too.
It felt good to say it. As crazy as that is, like the here in the now, in when we're so immersed in this reality, especially with the technology we have and just constant feed of information coming at us 24/7, then we get into these echo chambers and we almost get in this mentality of groupthink where we're just so focused on that being so negative. And there is negative aspects to it, don't get me wrong, but it's like at the highest level, it's those things are there to present us a choice, to show us the polarities in the spectrum in between the two, and to make us, just like you said, turn inward and reflect on what our appetite is in this lifetime with regards to the two choices that were offered.
It's super interesting because, as you know, I'm a big fan of Dr. David Hawkins's scale of consciousness. I share about that, using that model for us to help find some guidance, some clarity about how to navigate all the craziness that's going on. And if I can spend a little time to introduce your audience to it.
Yes, please.
So Dr. David Hawkins, he's an amazing pioneer in consciousness. Here's one of his books that I just happen to have sitting around. And he's developed this scale of consciousness from a scale of 1 to 1,000. 1,000 being Jesus level, full integration as a human. 1 being the lowest possible level of consciousness in this physical reality. And so it's actually a logarithmic scale, because as he goes up, there's a exponential kind of a increase. And so it would be too many zeros. So when he says on the scale, like if somebody is at 200 level, it's actually 10 to the 200th power. This 500 is like 10 to the 500th power, and so on. And if it's 1,000, it's really 10 to the 1,000th power.
This is right up your alley because you love math too.
Because I love math, yes. And so too the PCR test. I didn't realize that having to explain the PCR test and so many of these things, my math degree that I thought I walked away from, would actually come in handy.
There you go.
Anyway, with the map of consciousness, so 20 is the level of shame, 30 is the level of guilt, 50 is the level of apathy or manipulation, 75 grief, 100 fear, 125 desire, 150 is anger. You can see it's like going up, right? 150 anger, 175 pride, and 200 is the level of courage. Dr. Hawkins' research shows that when you're vibing below 200, for the most part, all your activities will be destructive. Above 200, you are actually, I don't know what words he says, but how I understand it is that you're actually constructive. You're like creating things instead of destroying life. So at 200 courage, you start to be like, hey, I could do something positive for myself. Let me learn about personal growth. Let me learn how to work with my finance, my relationships, my time management, my health, and all this stuff. So when people reach a level of 200, they start to be interested in personal growth. Then you go higher. 250 is neutrality, 310 willingness, 350 acceptance/forgiveness, 400 reason and understanding, 500 is love. When you get up to 500, another big shift happens where you no longer really focus on the tools, tactics, and strategies of personal growth, but your life starts to flow with synchronicities and beauty and alignment. At 540, you're at the level of joy. At 600, you're at the level of peace. And 700 to 1,000, you're at the level of enlightenment. And Jesus calibrated at 1,000, for example. So the reason I brought this up is that I've, since one of the many blessings on my journey as a truth seeker, since that first experience with Qigong in 2003, I was like, I need some answers to life. And one of the profoundly life-changing books was Dr. David Hawkins's Power versus Force back then. And this Map of Consciousness book came out more recently, but that gave me this understanding why I had something happen in that meditation that temporarily blasted me to maybe close to 1,000. And then suddenly I had to come back to whatever level I was at. I don't know what I was at. And it was a lot of discombobulation. It took a lot of time for me to then gradually do all the inner work to scale back up that ladder to integrate all the levels. So that's what the last almost 2 decades really of my life has been about, like integrating like all the levels of consciousness that I got blasted through. And there was a lot of shadow work and inner work and healing work and inquiry and just so much to integrate all the levels. So recently, after my many years of being interested in Dr. David Hawkins's work, I came across this really interesting couple on YouTube that has some really interesting videos that I recommend. There is a couple named Elena and Alejandro. I'm not associated with them, but they have a company called Holistic, and they developed a technology for measuring consciousness levels of some different things. And they measured Tony Fauci and Bill Gates, and it's super interesting. I love it. I just love it so much. So it calibrated all these things, and they calibrated all the injections, and they found that according to their measurements, the injections were all in the 20 to 50 level.
Oh, wow.
Out of a scale of 1,000, right? And so that means that some people, it could really cause some problems for their health, but some people have such a high level of consciousness that they could maybe just transmute the thing. I don't know.
I love that so much. Actually, thank you for saying that, because there seems to be this. Okay, first off, I want to say, like, I will never, ever, ever receive that thing, because I look at it, as you so eloquently put, that like, I'm not making decisions for my body based on fear. I'm making decisions for my body based on treating it as a temple for consciousness, for my soul, whatever you want to call it. And those decisions are based in love, right? But there seems to be this perception of like doom and gloom for the people that do receive the shot. That's like, oh, they're gone, they're done. I don't think that whatsoever. I actually tweeted that the other day, and I got some responses that were pretty interesting. And I think the power of consciousness, especially if we're vibrating at a certain level, which brings into question why someone would want to receive that shot anyway, but let's take that. That's a discussion for another time. But if they do receive the shot, to say that they are done for is ridiculous in my mind, because it is going against the very principle of how so many of us, even the people listening, perceive health, right? We know the power of the human spirit and the human mind to create the conditions, despite our circumstances, to have a beautiful life, to transmute pain, to transmute bodily or mental or spiritual trauma into something that is beneficial, or to just like brush it off like nothing happened. Right.
It's like Ram Dass tells the famous story of meeting his guru in India, and how he had been on this journey of taking all kinds of doing experiments with LSD. He brought a boatload of LSD and showed it to his guru, and the guru ate so much, I don't know, like 10x or 100x the normal dose or something. I can't remember, however much it would have killed a normal person. He ate all this boatload of LSD, and he just like smiled like nothing happened. He could transmute the whole thing, right? Because he was at such a stable, high level of consciousness that it did nothing to him. And there's a big part of me that wonders, this new generation of children that have incarnated, and as you and I both know, like there's some beautiful children that are incarnating. I wonder if there's a whole bunch of them that are here to demonstrate that possibility. I would never choose consciously to put a 20 to 50 vibe level substance or any kind of toxin or poisonous substance. If I could have a choice, I would never choose that for my children. But some of these children incarnated into families that aren't as aware as your family or mine. And I wonder about that. Like maybe they're here to also bring forth a powerful kind of change and new understanding too, in their own way, you know.
Like a shift of like the meeting in the middle for like these two opposing sides. And I hate even calling it that with regards to health though. And like, obviously there's always a spectrum in between everything, but it's like, in many ways, it's almost teaching us a lesson in nuance almost, or like the nuanced possibility that, like, again, I hate that I even have to say this, but I feel the need to, like, I am not advocating to get it ever, and I never would, but it's like teaching us that there is a possible different way to look at this, that people can be completely fine with that, right?
It's so paradoxical, because this whole idea of that which you resist persists. And so if we're anti something, then it actually gives it more energy to persist, and it has the counterproductive effect of making it stronger. Instead of us just being like, not that interested. This party over here is way more awesome.
Yeah.
And then it's just, the whole thing just fades away without you having to fight against it, right? It's so much more efficient that way. Back to the Tony Fauci, Bill Gates thing, this couple that does all these calibrations, what I found super interesting in their work, again, I'm not associated with them, but if they're listening, I just want to thank them for their contribution to this really important understanding. They develop also a way of measuring how, out of 100%, how much somebody is living their divine purpose.
Wow.
Out of 100%. And so they found that these shadow players, such as Bill Gates and Fauci and so on, that they have very low overall level of consciousness, and yet they're 100% living their purpose.
Wow. That's amazing. And that's like, that draws back to what my original question was, because it's like, I wonder if they consciously chose that because they knew that would be their role to help consciousness evolve, consciousness to continue to expand, right? I have two more questions for you, so I know you have to go soon too. These are the last two.
I know you have a time limit, but I'm okay. Yeah,
you're good. Okay. Well, I have two more questions that I ask everyone, and I think you're gonna hit a home run on these. So the first one is, why are we here? What is the purpose of us being here in this reality, in this experience?
You asked some good questions. Ooh. Why are we here? We're here to be examples for one another of the infinite possibilities of life. So Fauci, Bill Gates, these guys are an example to show us one possibility. Alec and all the awesome people that you interview, they're here to show you another aspect of the full spectrum of possibilities. And so we're here to be examples for each other, to actually play a full spectrum, a full symphony of a beautiful song that is the fullest expression for the universe. So we're here to play our part in the most beautiful way possible, to live our divine purpose, whichever purpose we might have chosen for this particular lifetime. And knowing that everybody is actually infinite being, that there is likely more than just one lifetime, that we can, I hope, enjoy more fully the full expression of everybody that we see out there, and appreciate the shadow players and the light workers and everybody in between for the beautiful part that they're choosing to play in this lifetime. So complete unconditional love for everybody and appreciation for everybody for being the example that they are, because without their examples, how can each of us find clarity of what we prefer and what we don't prefer, right? Like, how can you learn to be healthy if you don't sometimes bump into unhealthiness? Isn't it those moments where you got out of balance that you're like, you know what? I could do better than this, right? Without that contrast, how would you learn and find that clarity? So I believe that we're here to just show one another through our examples so that we can all find that clarity together.
That was great. That was awesome. I love that because it's such a like spectrum, and we're shown the whole spectrum in these two polarities to discern with ourselves where we fall on that spectrum. And it's like the understanding that consciousness, God, universe, whatever you want to call it, is experiencing itself in an infinite number of unique ways. And that is the whole purpose. It's for its like our own expansion and evolution, right?
Yeah, for example, seeing some of the things that's happening in the schools with the children, you want to pray for these children to get out of those situations with the, plexiglass and you can't see your friends and all this stuff. And for me, it just clarifies that years ago when we chose the homeschooling, unschooling path, that we made the right decision. So there's like simultaneous, this like heartache and wishing for others to also learn what they need to learn out of the old paradigm quickly and get out without too much suffering, and deep gratitude. Like, wow, that's really clarifying for me that we made the right choice for our family.
This is a good segue into my last question, because like you just said how you hope those families can figure it out and get on the right path soon. So this one's a fun one to ask. If you had 2 to 5 minutes to share an unfiltered, unedited message on all mainstream news platforms, like someone came up to you and was like, hey, you have 2 to 5 minutes. This is going to be shown all over the world. Obviously a complete situation that would not happen right now with someone like you or I, but what would you say in those 2 to 5 minutes?
Wow. Alec, you should have told me that earlier. I got to sleep on this one. Wow, this could be big. 2 to 5 minutes, what would you tell the whole world?
Or 30 seconds or 40. Like I have had someone give like a 1-sentence answer and I was like, that was really good. So.
Okay. Well, I mean, this answer might evolve, but lately I've been thinking like, okay, with all the weird psyops and, like false storylines that people are being told, what's a joyful, loving way to invite people to wake up from all the lies that the media has been telling? So I really love how, what is the Samuel Eckhart, who has the $1 million prize for the isolation and purification?
Yes, I think that's his name. I think it's like 1.2 million now, actually.
Okay, so I think they're doing the donuts and the lotto tickets and all of this. I think I might put up some kind of prize. It'd be like, okay, 2 to 5 minutes. I'm gonna give you a 20 question quiz question. I would read out a bunch of questions and be like, whoever gets 100% of these questions correct wins some big prize, like gets entered into a lottery to win a big prize. And they would be questions around, did you know that the SARS-CoV-2 is in silico? And do you know that Tony Fauci said any PCR cycles above 35 is just noise? Do you know what cycle on average was used all throughout the past year to diagnose so-called cases? You know that, like all these questions, and just have fun with it, have a good sense of humor with it. I think if I had a few minutes, I'd be like, okay, I'm issuing a challenge to the whole world out there. If you get all of these questions correct, you're going to win, whatever, $100,000. I don't have millions of dollars, but whatever. And then just generate a lot of interesting and exciting, joyful conversation around it. And then boom, everybody would wake up from the dream.
I love that. That's not where I saw it going, but that's like one of my favorite answers.
Because what is it that we want? To me, the story is not about being pro-jab or anti-jab, or pro this or anti that, pro-mask, anti-mask, all this stuff. Is being pro thinking for yourself, pro free thought, right? And therefore pro free will. But if you don't have free thought, how can you have free will, for example, right? So like pro informed consent. But if you don't have the information, how can you be informed consent? Like that just is not possible. So if we're pro informed consent, we want to find a way to share the information but people can't hear the information if you're just like shoving it down their throat. But again, with an awesome prize that goes with it, to generate conversation is not about what I think. It's about, hey, have you researched all this information? Asking questions and see if people can generate their own answers and gamify it so it's fun and joyful and totally non-judgmental. I think that's where I would go with my, 2 minutes of fame.
That's good. I love that. Hopefully you wouldn't be out too much money on that with the prize you offered, but
it would be so worth it. If it generated millions more people to wake up, it would be so worth it, because that's what we came to this planet to do, to all wake up collectively so that we can walk away from the old nightmare and create that really beautiful new world. As Charles likes to say, the more beautiful world our hearts know is possible. We totally know in our hearts that that's what we came to do. So if I was out a little money in order to make that possible, I would gladly donate it.
That's awesome. I love that, because I know with you, it's like coming authentically from your soul that you truly mean that. So Dr. E, thank you so much. I still have like legit, let me look actually, like 9 questions that I didn't get to ask. So we'll have to do a part 2 if we can at some point. This was awesome. Thank you so much.
Alec, thank you so much for all the beautiful work that you do. Truly, truly. I know I'm speaking for your audience. I'm speaking for a lot of our like-minded colleagues and friends. Is really, this past year has been such a strange year, and many of us lost a lot of friends, and many of us gained a lot of beautiful new friendships. And many of us were just blown away with inspiration for the powerhouses of awesome people that showed up in our circle, and you're definitely amongst those like creme de la creme of awesome people that showed up in my life. And I feel so grateful for you, and so blessed that you're on the planet doing this beautiful work. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That was so kind of you. Thank you, Dr. E. Thank you for joining me.